Hello and welcome to Neo Psychology with me, your teacher, Mr. Neo, the channel where I teach online psychology lessons for my wonderful students. Today we're starting a new unit of social influence. Let's get started. Starter. Which line, A, B or C, is the same as the standard line on the left? Which line is the same? A, B or C? It's clearly B, right? B is the same as that standard line. It looks the same to me. If you agree with me, then maybe you've just conformed. If you said C, then you would be right. Right? The answer is C. But if you said B, it's because you conformed your answer to what I said. Because today's lesson is lesson 1, conformity. And we're going to look at a classic study by Solomon Asch in 1956. Solomon Asch's research has had a considerable impact on our understanding of conformity. We often go along with other people in our everyday social lives. We agree with their opinions and change our behavior to fit in with theirs. In other words, we conform. Asch wanted to find out why. So we're going to have a look at a few things today. First of all, Asch's 1951 baseline study. We're going to then have a look at other variables that may affect conformity. And then we're going to evaluate Asch's research. Let's get started on learning objective 1, Asch's 1951 baseline study. Solomon Asch devised a procedure to measure the extent that people conformed to the opinions of others, even in a situation when the other answers were clearly wrong. What was the procedure? 123 American male participants were tested individually, sitting last or next to last in a group of 6 to 8 confederates. A confederate is a fake participant, a stooge, if you will. So here's the procedure. They were shown 2 large cards. On one was a standard line. On the other were 3 comparison lines. One of the 3 lines was the same length as the standard, and the other 2 were always clearly different. Each group member stated which of the 3 lines matched the standard line. Here are the findings. Asch found that the naive participant is the real participant rather than the fake Confederate participant. Asch found that the naive participants conformed what percent of the time? What would you predict? I think that the participants would conform what percent of the time? What would you guess? Well, you're wrong, because the answer is 33%, all right? A third of the time people conformed and gave the wrong answer, right? This showed a high level of conformity when the situation is unambiguous. Unambiguous meaning it wasn't ambiguous, it was clear. The answer was obvious what was the right answer. There were individual differences though. 25% of the participants never gave a wrong answer, i.e. they never conformed. So a quarter never conformed and 75% conformed at least once. Okay? So those are the key figures. Asch found that the naive participants conformed 33% of the time. So, according to this data, if the numbers match the people viewing this, a third of you should have conformed to my answer in the starter saying that it was B, and 2/3 of you, so 67%, should have said that it was C, ideally the right answer. Whoever said A, you're a weirdo. Here's the definition of conformity, all right? You need to know your key terms. You need to use your key terms because that shows you're a higher caliber student, right? Let's have a look. What is conformity? Conformity is a change in a person's behavior or opinions as a result of real or imagined pressure from a person or group of people, okay? A change in a person's behavior or opinions as a result of real or imagined pressure from a person or group of people. That is conformity. Right. Feel free to watch this replication of Asch's research into conformity. It was done by Vsauce. You can check it out on YouTube. How would you react? How do you think you would react in this scenario? And that's Asch's baseline study. Can you identify one thing you learned about Asch's baseline study? Why do you think learning about this is important? Who is this information useful to? What was the hardest part to understand about Asch's baseline study? And what questions has this raised for you? Can you quiz your partner or somebody that you know next to you something you've learned? That's learning objective 1 done already. We are 1 learning objective down. Let's have a look at 2, the variables affecting conformity. Here we go. Asch in 1956, so a lot of researchers replicate their study multiple times. So students are often worried, oh, what if I get the year wrong? Don't worry too much about the year. Researchers often replicate their study multiple times, so there are multiple potential years where you could get the answer, okay? Here you go. Asch has replicated it in 1956. He extended his baseline study to investigate the variables that might lead to an increase or a decrease in conformity. So let's have a look at these variables. Make note on how the following 3 variables affected conformity in Asch's study. You got group size, the group of the participants used. Unanimity, if everyone was unanimous, meaning that everyone agreed on the answer. And the task difficulty. Let's have a look at those in a bit more detail. Variable 1, group size. Asch varied the number of confederates in each group between 1 and 15, total size between 2 and 16. Asch found very little conformity with a majority of 1 or 2. But when there were 3 confederates, conformity rose to around 32%. Above 3 confederates, conformity rates leveled off. Adding more than 3 confederates made very little difference. So Asch concluded that people are very sensitive to other people's opinions and conform to fit in. And you can see on the diagram on the graph on the bottom right hand side of the screen, when there was 1 naive real participant and 1 confederate, conformity rates were very low, around 3%. Okay, if you were with 1 other person and they gave an answer that you thought was wrong, people weren't going to, only 3% of people conformed when, yeah, I think this guy's right. When it got 2 other people and 1 naive participant, it increased to looks like around 13%, but still not very high. But what we found is when there was 3 people and the naive participant, that's when conformity levels rose. But they didn't keep increasing with the group size. It found that it sort of leveled off. Whether there was 3, 4, 5 or even 15 other participants, conformity rates stayed at around 30 to 35%-ish. So, does group size affect conformity? Yes, but only to a certain degree. Variable 2, unanimity. Asch introduced a dissenting confederate. Sometimes they gave the correct answer, and sometimes a different wrong answer, but they always disagreed with the majority. So a dissenting confederate is one that went against the group. If everyone was saying one answer, one of the participants said a different answer. It might have been the correct answer, or it might have been another wrong answer. Asch found that in the presence of a dissenter, conformity reduced on average to less than a quarter of the level it was when the majority was unanimous. Conformity reduced if dissenters gave a right or wrong answer. So Asch concluded that having a dissenter, enabled the naive participant to behave more independently. So if everyone was saying an answer, everyone going B, 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 B. If one other person, you thought it was C, everyone else is saying B. If one other person said an answer that went against the group, even if it wasn't the one you were thinking, if the other person said A, conformity levels decreased and you were more likely to say your answer because the rest of the group was not unanimous. They did not all agree on the same answer. The final variable, variable 3 that Asch had a look at was task difficulty. Asch made the line judging task harder by making stimulus line and comparison lines more similar in length. Thus, it was difficult to see differences between the lines. Asch found conformity increased. So with task difficulty, the more difficult the task, the more conformity there was, as one would expect. Asch concluded that the situation is more ambiguous, so we are more likely to look to others for guidance and to assume they are right and we are wrong. This is an informational social influence, which we're going to look at in a later lesson. So, here's a quick task. As shown by Asch's research, the rate of conformity varies depending on certain variables. For each of the conditions below, state whether the rate of conformity is likely to increase, decrease, or stay the same. Pause the video, 8 questions, increase, decrease, stay the same, give it a go. And we're going to go through the answers now. Right. If the task is more difficult, is conformity going to increase, decrease, or stay the same? It's going to increase. More conformity is harder because the task is harder, so you're more likely to conform. The task is on a topic which is very familiar to the participant. I'm an expert in this. I know the right answer, therefore conformity is going to decrease. 3. There is non-conformist in the group who gives the right answer. We've got a dissenting person, someone who doesn't go with the group. Is conformity going to increase or decrease? It's going to decrease. There is only one confederate. Decrease. Number 5, the task is easier. If we're easier, we're going to be more confident of our answers, therefore conformity is going to decrease. Number 6, there is a non-conformist in the group who gives the wrong answer. Doesn't matter if it's a right or wrong answer, conformity is still going to decrease because the group is not unanimous. Number 7, the confederates are more expert than the participants on the task. Therefore, conformity is going to increase. If everyone else knows more about the subject than you do, you are more likely to conform to the group. And finally, instead of 7 confederates, there are 4. Is that going to increase, decrease, or stay the same? Well, according to Asch's research, it's going to stay the same, right? It doesn't matter if there are 3, 4, or even 15 confederates. Conformity didn't really get much more better or worse. And those are variables affecting conformity. Now we're going to have to look at the evaluation. What are the strengths and what are the limitations of Asch's research? Let's have a look. What are some of the strengths and limitations of Asch's 1956 research? Number 1, the situation and task were very artificial. Participants knew they were in a research study. People have argued that the participants knew they were in a research study, which can result in demand characteristics. The task was trivial and there was no reason not to conform. Fiske in 2014 argued that Asch's group were not like real-life groups. It lacked mundane realism. It was not realistic to real life. This means the findings do not generalize to everyday life, especially those situations where the consequences of conformity are important. Is that a strength or limitation? That is a limitation. You want your research to be realistic, not to be artificial, not to lack mundane realism. Second one, Asch's findings have little application. Only American men were tested by Asch, right? All male sample, all American sample. Netto in 1995 suggested that women might be more conformist, possibly because they are more concerned about social relationships and being accepted. Also, the US is an individualist culture, and studies in collectivist cultures, like China, have found higher conformity rates, Bond and Smith in 1996. This means Asch's findings tell us little about conformity in women and people from some cultures outside of Western civilization or American or America itself. And the final, and that is of course a limitation. And the final evaluative point is this one, evidence to support Asch's findings. Lucas et al.'s 2006 research asked participants to solve easy and hard maths problems. Participants were given answers that falsely claimed to be from 3 other students. The participants conformed more often, or agreed with the wrong answers, when the problems were harder. This shows Asch was correct and that task difficulty is one variable that does affect conformity. This is supporting research, so therefore it is a strength. Right, can you summarize each evaluative point into your own words? As a challenge, can you do it into exactly 10 words? Give that a go now, please. And that's the evaluation. That's today's lesson. Here's the plenary. It's a video. Watch this video of an experiment into conformity. Can you explain why people conform? Let's have a look at that video now.
The gentleman in the elevator now is a candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with the white shirt, the lady with the trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat maintain his individuality. But little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups. Here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door. Everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns forward. Notice they take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.
And that was Lesson 1, Conformity, Asch's 1956 research. Okay, thank you for watching Neuropsychology. Well done, my neuropsychologists. Great work today. Tomorrow, next lesson is Lesson 2, Conformity, Types and Explanations of Conformity. I've been Miss Neo. God bless and peace.
I'm feeling like Will, I feel like a prince, I'm feeling myself. I'm loaded with bills, cause I wasn't blessed with no Uncle Phil. Don't know how it feels, I wanted to flex, they told me to chill. I'm making a flip, my life is a flick, now load up the film.